Hi there, this is Chris, Chap in the Cap Motor Legends. Today I want to talk to you about, guess what? Daytona motorcycle boots. Now, Daytona makes the best motorcycle boots that money can buy. Nobody who has ever owned a pair or who has ever ridden a pair would argue with this assertion. But the range can be confusing, and as Daytona's boots are not inexpensive, you want to know if you're going to buy a pair, you want to know that you're getting the right style for the riding that you do. And that's why we put this brief review together. Now, we did something similar before COVID, and although the Daytona range is almost glacial in its development, enough years have probably passed between then and now to justify a re-examination of the range. So anyway, let's look at the range. The Frey brothers opened their shoe factory in Eggenfelden in Bavaria in 1957. Today the company still operates from that same building, and they still only manufacture boots. And whilst the product has changed significantly over the 70 years they've been in business, the philosophy behind them has changed very little. Almost 50 years ago, Helmut Frey wrote, "With some years of manufacturing now behind us, we now know that our approach is right. We're not a cheap manufacturer. We know we never can be, and we know that we never want to be. What we make is a high quality product that is put together using only the best ingredients. For us, quality and workmanship come first." Now, if I was trying to write a mission statement for Motor Legends, I'd like to think that it wouldn't be very much different. And that statement still describes the Daytona company of the 21st century. Daytona stands for the highest levels of protection, durability and comfort. The boots are still made by hand by time-served craftsmen and craftswomen. In the words of the current head of the company, Reinhard Frey, that's how it was then and that's how it will remain. And this last observation I think is telling. Daytona has no desire, for example, to brand extend or to broaden the franchise, as the marketing wonks would say. They don't want to make gloves, jackets, helmets or even t-shirts. They're not set on world domination, they don't sell direct, they just want to make the best boots. Now, their capacity in the factory is limited and the demand for their boots will always outstrip supply, so the price ends up being the price. If you don't think you can afford a pair, well, that's a shame but understandable. But Daytona is never going to make a cheaper product in order to broaden the appeal. I'm sorry about that. The starting point for any boot, of course, is its leather, and Daytona uses only the best leather. Supple yet strong, all the hides that are used by the company are hydrophobically treated for water repellency at the tanning stage. In terms of protection, you'll always get plastic ankle protectors padded on the inside with open cell foam. There will be counters in the toe and the heel, although Daytona as a company is ever mindful of the need for a boot to be comfortable, not only for walking in, but also for riding in. You will nearly always get a foam-backed PU gear change pad. On their taller boots, you will get a wide-shaped shin bone protector, padded again on the inside with latex foam. On such boots, you'll normally also always get a mechanism for adjusting the volume around the calf. But what you always get with Daytona that you don't get with other boots is a reinforced plastic insole that incorporates a hot and dipped galvanized steel inlay for transverse rigidity. And it's this that will stop your foot from being crushed if something should drive over it. Of course, there are lots of different styles of boot in the Daytona range these days. There are short ones, tall ones, even taller ones, waterproof ones, non-waterproof ones. They do off-road boots, although I have to say we're not particularly keen on them. They do sporty ones, they do more classic ones. But whatever the boot you choose, Daytona will only ever use the best components. So I suppose we're talking about things like YKK zips, Gore-Tex membranes, genuine 3M Scotch-Rite reflectors and so on. And as a result of this, Daytona boots tend to be incredibly reliable. They just go on and on. My own Roadstars, for example, are almost 30 years old. But if, after years of abuse, your Daytona boots do start to fall apart, then you do not throw them away because Daytona will repair them. They can change zips, they can replace membranes, gear change pads, they can apply new soles and so on. Now, when it comes to waterproofing, nobody does it better. Here in the shop, there cannot be many weeks when we don't get somebody in complaining about their boots leaking. But rare is the occasion when we get somebody in claiming that their Daytona boots are leaking. Of course, in theory, it can happen, but it's just very, very infrequent. If somebody comes into the shop and claims that both of their Daytona boots are leaking, we just fall about laughing. We assume that it's a joke because, I have to tell you, it just does not happen. It would be like winning the Euro Millions 2 weeks on the trot. But if 10 or 20 years down the road your Daytona boots do genuinely leak, you've got the backing of Gore's lifetime waterproofing guarantee. If there is a problem, Gore will simply send you a new pair. So one has to ask, after all this gump, what are the downsides to Daytona boots? After all, there must be some. Well, there's the cost, obviously, but what you have to bear in mind is that there's a big difference between cost and value. The most popular boot in the Daytona range, I suppose, is the Roadstar, and at today's prices, that's going to come in a little bit under, I don't know, something like £500. But the fact is that you're going to be wearing these boots in 5 years' time, however hard you ride, however poorly you look after them. With just a modicum of care, you'll still be upshifting in these boots in 10 years' time. Look after them properly, and you'll get at least 20 years. But no two ways about it. You can buy a similar looking waterproof touring boot from someone like TCX for half the money. But frankly, you'd be lucky to get more than, I don't know, 3 years regular use out of such a boot. So you do the math. The way we see it, Daytona does the best value motorcycle boots out there. There is, however, one issue with Daytona boots, and that's the warranty. It is not the best. Buy a boot without Pro in the title. It's a little bit confusing, and I'll touch upon this later, but buy a boot that does not have the word Pro in the title, and you'll only get a 1-year warranty. And that seems a little out of kilter given the price of Daytona's boots. Buy a boot that does have the word Pro in the title, and you'll get a 3-year warranty. Now, a product this expensive, one might have expected a longer warranty, but in reality, Daytona boots do not tend to fail, so it is perhaps a bit of a moot point. But all I can say is that if I had bought, for example, a non-Pro boot and the zip failed after 18 months, I would feel a little bit upset, and therefore I think that the warranty is just not up to scratch. Now, I'd also have to point out that on the Pro boots where you do get a 3-year warranty, you have to register for the extension from 1 year to 3 years within 1 month. And I think that's a bit harsh. It almost feels as though they're trying to catch you out. One last thing I have to say about Daytona boots. They're never going to win a fashion contest. Functional, yes. Stylish and attractive, I've got to say, less so. Anyway, let's take a look at the range and see if we can help you work out the boot that is best going to work for you. The Roadstar Pro GTX is the mainstay of the Daytona range. It's got a 29cm shaft, and it comes with what is known as a Duratherm membrane. Now, there are 3 different membranes within the Daytona range, and they vary according to the amount of insulation that they provide. So the Duratherm membrane is the membrane that's designed for the coldest temperatures. So it's designed to look after you from 0 degrees up to about 28 degrees. There are 2 other membranes. The more seasoned membrane is a little bit less insulating. That's about temperatures from 10 degrees up to about 30 degrees. The coolest membrane, as it were, the membrane designed for hot weather riding, is called the carbon grey membrane, and that's designed for temperatures from, I think, 15 degrees up to 35 degrees. Now, the Daytona Roadstar Pro is the most popular boot in the range. Truth be told, nobody needs anything more. It comes in a narrow, a regular and a wide fit, although in the UK, the narrow fit is exclusive to Moto Legends. There's a version that comes, or a version of the Roadstar that comes with a 6cm heel lift. So it's a hidden heel lift at the back of the boot. And it's designed for people for whom the bike is too tall, or designed for people who are perhaps height challenged. And that boot is called the M-Star. That's this boot. There's then another version of the M-Star, pretty much the same boot, called the Lady Star. So that's a ladies version of the boot, and again with a 6cm lift in the heel. Now, new for 2024 is a version of the Roadstar boot that's called the Roadstar Pro Air GTX, and that is this boot. Basically, that's got the carbon grey membrane, so it's designed for hotter climates. It's also got an amount of perforated leather. So if you do most of your riding in the summer or the spring and you don't do a lot of winter riding, maybe the Pro Air is a better boot for you. Also, perhaps if you go touring. Now, all of these boots come in a size up to 47, except the M-Star, which only goes up to a 45. The Lady Star goes up to a 39. All of these are Pro boots, so they all come with a 3-year warranty. This boot, the Travelstar Pro, was originally developed for the UK police. In fact, I think it was one of the very first boots to be CE approved. Slightly taller boot than the Roadstar. It's got a shaft that's about 3 centimetres taller than the Roadstar. It's got the same membrane, however. That's the Duratherm membrane, the membrane that is designed for slightly cooler weather riding. You've got an extra thick shin guard here, allegedly. I can't, when I feel the shin guards, I can't tell the difference, but apparently there's an extra layer here in the shin guard of the Travelstar Pro, so it's nominally a slightly more protected boot. What you've definitely got is an extra flap that runs here down the zip on both sides. You don't get that with the Roadstar. This boot goes up to a size 48, but really there is very little difference to the Roadstar. It's a Pro boot, so again, you get the 3-year warranty. This is the Traveller GTX, and at 34 centimetres, the shaft is 2 centimetres higher than the shaft of the Travelstar Pro boot. So it's one of the tallest and therefore by implication one of the most protected boots in the range. Like the Roadstar, like the Travelstar Pro, it's got the Duratherm more winterized membrane. The big difference between this boot and the Roadstar and the Travelstar Pro is that the zips run all the way down to almost the toe. And that makes this boot much easier to get in and out of than the other two boots. This boot is the best boot for those people who have perhaps a lack of flexibility in the ankle, or for people who have a high instep. The Traveller has one other trick up its sleeve. It goes up to a huge size 51. Now, it's not a Pro boot, so you need to bear in mind that you only get 1 year warranty with this boot. It's the most expensive touring boot in the Daytona range. In the UK, it's exclusive to Moto Legends. This boot is the Aros GTX. It is in essence an ankle height version of the taller Roadstar boot. Obviously it's a Gore-Tex boot, but this boot has the more seasoned membrane, so that's the slightly less insulating membrane, good for temperatures from 10 degrees up to about 30 degrees. It's got a 22 centimetre shaft, so quite a bit shorter than the Roadstar. What that means is this is going to be an easier boot to walk in, but by the same token, it's going to be a little bit less waterproof and a little bit less protective. It's going to be less waterproof, even though it's got the same Gore-Tex membrane, because water can hit the ground as you're riding along and bounce over the top of the shaft. So the lower the shaft of a boot, the less waterproof it's going to be. By the same token, again, it's going to be a little bit less protective. No difference in the footbed, but what you've lost is you've lost the leather from the 22 centimetre shaft up to the top of the shaft of the Roadstar boot. So nominally it's a little bit less protective, but otherwise you've got all the same protective elements, the counters, the ankle protectors, the shank and the sole and so on. The twin zips in this boot mean that they are really easy to get in and out of. Boots like this also work well, we have found, with people who have big calves. There are some people, it doesn't happen a lot, but there are some people who just cannot get into a Roadstar or a Travelstar because they've got calves that are too big. And even though there's a calf adjuster on the tall touring boots from Daytona, some people just can't get into them. You wear a shorter boot like this and you obviate the problem, you can ignore the problem. The same boot comes with a 6 centimetre heel lift in the back, a kind of hidden heel lift. Again, as with the M-Star, this is for people who are challenged in the vertical plane or who have a bike that's a little bit too tall for them. That's a 6 centimetre heel in the rear. This boot is known as the Max Sport. Now, there's a new version for 2024, a version of this boot that's called the Pro Air. It's got the lightest carbon grey membrane, so that's for summer riding, not really the kind of boot you'd wear throughout the winter. It's also got perforations in the leather, so this is the boot that is designed for wearing in warmer weather, so over the summer if you're touring and so on. It's only the Air version that is a Pro boot, so with the Pro boots, the Air Pro, you've got a 3-year warranty. With these other two, you've only got a 1-year warranty. Sorry, that's the way it is. This is the Journey Pro GTX, very similar to the Aros GTX, so you've got the same 22 centimetre shaft and all of the same safety components, so the shaft, the ankle protectors, the counters in the toe and the heel and so on. It shares the lighter carbon grey membrane, so that's the membrane for warmer weather riding that you get in the Aros Pro Air. This is a boot, however, that the main difference I think is it works particularly well for those who are perhaps a little bit less mobile, as the Velcro straps are much easier to use than the zips. It also makes the boot, I think, a little bit more adjustable. This is a Pro boot, so you get a 3-year warranty with it. This is the Lady Pilot SL GTX. SL obviously standing for Sarah Linney, the name of our managing director. And this is what happens when Daytona attempts to do high fashion. It's got a Gore-Tex Duratherm membrane, so that's the more wintry membrane. It's got a 20 centimetre shaft, but it's got a 6 centimetre heel lift in the heel. So it's got all the standard protective features you'll find on every Daytona boot. But this is the second boot in the range, the Lady Star being the first, that has a heel lift. And so what it means is that, ironically, Daytona does not produce a touring boot for taller ladies. They have assumed that every lady who rides a bike is somehow shorter. I don't know where that's come from. This is not a pro boot, so you only get a 1-year warranty. This is the AC Dry Gore-Tex, and it's Daytona's take on a trainer come sneaker, but I don't think Michael Jordan and Nike need to be too worried. It's got the middleweight, more seasoned Gore-Tex membrane, so that's from 5 degrees up to about 30 degrees. The shaft is actually 20 centimetres tall. We always look at this boat and think it's got the highest shaft of any Daytona short boot, but in fact it doesn't. Technically, it's 2 centimetres shorter. The boot fastens by means of laces, but there's also a zip up the inside of the boot. This is a boot that's comfortable enough to wear all day, but it gives you the feel almost of a racing boot. It's a very nice boot to ride in. It's not a pro boot, however, so there's only a 1-year warranty with it. This is a boot that one might say is outside Daytona's traditional comfort zone. It's called the AC Classics Gorex. The Gore-Tex membrane, by the way, is the more seasoned membrane, so that's the one in the middle. It's got a 20 centimetre shaft, and basically this is a short ankle motorcycle boot meets Bavarian walking boot. It feels very solid and very strong. It's got all of the usual Daytona protection that you would expect on any Daytona boot. It's got laces that run through these speed eyelets. There's a zip up the inside, so it's a very easy boot to get into and out of. Here around the edge, it looks as though it's got a traditional Goodyear welt, but actually it's not the real deal. This is not a Goodyear welted boot. It's still, however, a very robust boot. It's not a pro boot, so it only comes with a 1-year warranty. Excitingly, however, for Daytona, it comes not only in black, but in brown as well. For Daytona, that's a bit out there. This is basically a waterproof boot for the sports bike rider. It's called the Aros GTX. It comes with the middle membrane, the more seasoned membrane. Shaft is 32 centimetres high. It's got all the usual protective bits that you'll get in every Daytona, but what it has, it's got some extra soft padding here, particularly around the ankle, and that's designed to give you a little bit more flexibility on the bike, a little bit more articulation. You also get this replaceable titanium slider if you are, for example, on track. It's not a pro boot, so you only get a 1-year warranty. This boot is known as the Flash, and Daytona bill it as a cheap boot for beginners. Well, at just under £300, I don't think it's really a cheap boot, but it is a lighter, back to basics boot. It's got a 34 centimetre shaft, so it's actually as tall as the Traveller. It's as tall as any boot in the range. Importantly, the reason for the lower price is that it does not come with a waterproof membrane. So for those who avoid the rain, for those who like to tour in hotter places, this might well be the perfect boot. It's still got all the important protective components, and you still get things like the calf adjuster. It's not a pro boot, so you only get a 1-year warranty. In the UK, this boot is exclusive to Moto Legends. Confusingly, even though this boot is called the AC Pro, it is not technically what Daytona term a pro boot, so you only get a 1-year warranty with it. It's got no membrane, so it's very much a summer boot. What it is a short shafted sports bike boot with a changeable titanium slider. It's more comfortable obviously than a race boot, so I think this is the kind of boot that the guy who's got a sports bike will have for days where he just doesn't want to wear the full get-up. The boot fastens with laces, and you also get a Velcro strap. You've got all the standard protective elements you get on all of their boots. In the UK, this boot is exclusive to Moto Legends. Well, I hope you found that useful. If you'd like to see more boots, visit the website motolegends.com. If you'd like to learn more about Daytona's boots, then click on one of the links on the screen. Sometimes they're up there, sometimes they're down there, and that will take you to a dedicated page on the website. When you're there, you can check out the spec in a little bit more detail, you can check on availability, and obviously if you want to buy a pair of Daytona boots there and then, you can do that. Now, when you buy from us, we try to make the process as simple, straightforward and risk-free as we possibly can. There's no delivery charge on any item of protective wear, returns are totally free, and what's more, we give you a full 12 months in which to decide whether you do want to return something to us. Now, we have the best price promise in the business. Many years ago, John Lewis was rightly famed for its never knowingly undersold price promise, but we go one stage better. If you can find anybody selling any product that we sell, such as a Daytona boot, if you can find anyone selling any product that we sell at a price that is lower than ours, we will beat that competitor's price by a full 10%. Now, there are a few terms and conditions associated with what we call our price beat. Nothing particularly onerous, I assure you, but if you are going to attempt to price beat us, I suggest you go over to the website and check out what those terms and conditions are. Now, if in the future you'd like to see bulletins from us about new products, then again, go to the website, the top of the screen, there's a piece of script that says newsletter sign up. Click on that, within seconds you'll be in business. In the future, you'll receive our email bulletins. If, however, you prefer to get your information videographically, that is to say in this form, we'd be simply delighted if you want to become a subscriber to our YouTube channel. Finally, I'd like to make mention of our fabulous little shop here at Moto Legends. It's about a mile from the centre of Guildford, a mile from the railway station. And as I've suggested, it's a small shop, it's got a small footprint. But it is attached to a warehouse where we have more than £4 million of stock arranged over 3 floors. And technically that makes this the second largest motorcycle apparel shop in the UK. But we would like to think that we are far more than just the amount of merchandise we have here in the building. We're all about service, we're all about personal fitting. If you want to check us out and visit Trustpilot, we have the highest 5-star ranking in the business. And when you come to see us, we'll serve you only the finest Italian illy coffee, or we'll serve you proper Yorkshire tea in a proper teapot. And who knows, if you're lucky, you might even get to sample one of our delicious motorcycle-shaped shortbread biscuits. Anyway, this has been Chris. I hope to talk to you again soon.